All right, so let's get right into it. We're talking about the biggest sport on the planet, football. And for what feels like forever, it was this beautiful game of pure art, total chaos, and just gut instinct. But then, this one deceptively simple statistic showed up and kicked off a whole revolution. This is the story of expected goals, or as you probably know it, XG, and how numbers basically declared war on tradition.
Now, what's so wild about this quote is who it's from. I mean, that's Arsene Wenger. He was one of the most forward-thinking, innovative managers of his time, and even he was skeptical. It just goes to show you how deep the resistance to data was in a sport that really believed its own magic couldn't and shouldn't be measured.
You know, for most of its history, football kind of prided itself on being, well, unknowable. It wasn't like baseball with its neat and tidy stats. Nah, this was a world ruled by the eye test. The only people who could truly get it were the ones who had played at a high level. At least, that's what they thought. So you can imagine when the first analysts started showing up in the 90s and early 2000s holding their spreadsheets, they were basically laughed right out of the building. The old guard just saw data as something for, American sports, or for fans messing around on video games like Championship Manager. It wasn't for the real game. But right in the middle of all that skepticism, a totally radical new idea started to bubble up. What if we stopped obsessing over the final result and started looking at the process that creates it? It all kicked off with one very simple question. And here it is. Just think about it for a second. Are all shots created equal? On a traditional stat sheet, a wild, hopeful shot from 30 yards out and a simple little tap in from right in front of the goal, they both just count as one shot. But are they the same? Of course not. And that simple, obvious truth, well, it changes absolutely everything. And this just lays it out perfectly. A hopeful strike from way, way out might have, a 2% chance of going in? But a tap-in, right there on the doorstep, that's more like a 70% chance. These are two completely different things, and it just makes sense that they should be measured differently. And that brings us to expected goals. Basically, by looking at thousands and thousands of shots from the past, computer models can give a probability score to any new shot based on stuff like how far out it was, the angle, and what kind of pass led to it. Now, here's the crucial part. XG is not predicting the final score. It's a measure of the quality of the chances a team is creating. So why was this such a game changer? Because for the first time, you could separate a team's performance from just plain old luck. A team could lose a game 1-0, but if their XG was, say, 2.5 and the other team's was 0.3, you could actually say, you know what? They played great, they just got really unlucky. It gave everyone a whole new language to talk about the game. And yeah, you can probably guess what happened next. This new language led to a full-blown culture war. You had the data pioneers on one side, and the football establishment, the old guard who believed the game belonged to them, on the other. And the funny thing is, the pioneers weren't people inside the clubs. They were bloggers, they were fans, they were data nerds like Michael Colley just working away on the sidelines. They weren't in it for the money, they were just curious. And they were building these amazing models in their spare time that the actual professional clubs just completely ignored at first. This really breaks down the two completely different ways of seeing the world. Over here, you've got the old guard. They believed in intuition, in the feel of the game, in what they could see with their own two eyes, the eye test. And then over here, you have the pioneers. They believed in data, evidence, and what the spreadsheet was telling them. It was a fight between focusing on results versus the process. And man, the pushback was intense. You'd have pundits and ex-players on TV openly mocking the nerds with their spreadsheets. The argument was always the same. How can you possibly understand the game if you've never played it? It was about ego for sure, but it was also a fear that this whole new way of thinking was a threat to their authority as the experts. But then, things started to shift. A few smart underdog clubs started looking at this and saw a massive opportunity. They realized, hey, wait a minute, if everybody else is laughing at this stuff, maybe we can use it to get a real advantage. And the poster child for this approach has to be Brentford FC. Their owner, a professional gambler named Matthew Benham, basically took what he knew from betting markets and applied it to football. He used data to find and sign players nobody else wanted, guys the numbers said were totally undervalued. And it worked. They rejected all the old superstitions and rose from total obscurity all the way to the Premier League. It was an incredible story. And it wasn't just the small clubs either. Take Liverpool. Their owners were the same group behind the Moneyball revolution in baseball, and they invested a ton in their data department. That investment led them straight to signing players like Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane, guys who became the absolute cornerstones of a team that won everything. So after these huge, high-profile successes, the war was pretty much over. The tide had turned for good. Expected goals went from this weird, obscure idea on some blog to a metric that's now just a fundamental part of how we all talk about football around the world. I mean, think about it. It is absolutely everywhere now. It flashes up on your TV screen during a live game. You hear pundits using it to make their arguments. Fans are yelling about it on Twitter. And behind the scenes, you better believe it, it's a critical tool for clubs and for the betting world. It's completely taken over. Okay, but it's important to be real here. XG isn't some perfect magical number that tells you everything. It's probably best to think of it as the gateway drug of football analytics. It doesn't know who is taking the shot. A chance for Lionel Messi is obviously way different than a chance for me. And it doesn't measure all the good stuff that happened before the shot. And that's where the next wave of analytics is headed. And really, when you zoom out, this was never just a story about football. You see this same pattern play out everywhere. Doctors fought against using simple checklists in surgery. Wall Street traders fought against algorithms. In any field that's ruled by tradition, data feels like a threat because it tells us uncomfortable truths, like the fact that our gut instinct can be wrong and that sometimes our results are just down to dumb luck. So the big takeaway from all this is pretty simple, but it's powerful. The world is measurable. And in any industry, in any part of life, the people who refuse to measure, who just cling to how things have always been done, well, they risk getting left behind. Which really just leaves us with one last question to think about. Look at your own world, your job, your industry, your passion. What's the one tradition, that one sacred cow that everyone just accepts without question? What part of your world is just sitting there, waiting for its own expected goals moment?